Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to my new acquisitions. I kept telling myself I was going to pick up this tank when it went on sale, and I finally found my chance. I sold off my last Mexus to defray some of the cost of this thing. I only had two of them, and behold the low boy as we squat down behind this low cover to have minimus profile possibilicus. And we're just gonna kind of camp here for a while because this is a good spot to camp and we have a job to do. When you have thermals, lawn darts, and laser rangefinder, it's so good, especially with a low profile, by the way, to pull off that camping trip du jour. And this is not really my favorite way to play the game, but it is my favorite way to play top tier because I just don't like rolling the dice by pushing forward and being flanked by everybody, because if somebody can get line of sight to you from any point on the map, they can kill you, especially in this thing. But that's totally fine, because this tank has, as I mentioned, a very low profile when you use the hydro-pneumatic suspension to lower yourself, and the turret is already set up for low profile operations already. We whiffed the shot on, what is that, an Abrams? It looks like an Abrams, and we set up nicely, indeed, XM1 GM, as AT GMs come into an ally, and here I am playing the low profile game and supporting my teammate to the best of my ability. Of course, the reload rate on this thing is not as good as it could be if it was a different tank, and yet we do have the ability to, if not save our comrade, at least avenge him. And my real goal in this match was to spend some time in this tank and then spend some time in the air in my nice new shiny premium Saber. I have been a fan of the Sabers since I started playing them, and I did start with the CL13 because why would you play anything else? And I didn't know how delightful an aircraft it was going to be. I was a little bit intimidated back in the day. In fact, I was a lot intimidated back in the day, and I really need to shake that feeling of the need to play so alert in high tier. This is sort of my top tier. I'm not interested in going into 10-3, 10-7 territory. That's just absolutely not my game. At least in this BR range, you tend to face things that you can actually pen, so you're not just stuck with a few meta vehicles and dealing with the annoying shell dynamics that we get to experience with the way that volumetrics are implemented in the game right now. I know it's going to be improved, and what we have is still an improvement over what we had in the past, but it means that for tanks that sort of ride the edge of, well, far outside below lull pen territory, and that face tanks that have very powerful armor schemes like top tier, or like around the 3.3 to 5.0 bracket where you start facing a lot of KV1s, things get, well, just a little bit difficult. In other words, this tank is delightful. It plays so well as a sniper, and that does mean that you're going to be sitting on the back row, not advancing, but supporting your teammates, and that can be kind of tedious, boring gameplay. But again, my real goal here is to spend time in this tank and get a feel for where I am. I'm not a super powerful top tier player, but I'm gonna do okay in this match. I'm gonna be really happy with my results, and you'll see that the vehicle really makes up for my mix of nerves and just a general unfamiliarity with the vehicle, because the modules on this thing are so capable, and of course, as a premium, it comes with all the bells and whistles right out of the box, and that is unfortunately one of the reasons that I enjoy premium so much, and I don't mind doing a little bit of side hustle as a lawn trimmer, which also helps me work off some of the fat that I'm building up as a result of the stress of everyday life and my general sedentary nature right now, and spending that money on picking up something a little bit nice. I also like the thought of having an additional what is this thing called? Type 74? type whatever it is. I'm sorry, I'm not super familiar with the Japanese tank names because, again, there's only a handful of tanks that I've played in the Japanese line, and this is really a sweet spot for them. And adding to that the fact that they're getting another one of these things in the next major update, the imminent major update, then it was a good time. And I have been just totally delighted by my purchase. I know it's a lot of money, and I definitely wouldn't have done it if I didn't have a little bit of Gaijin coin kicking around from the last event. But I am also really, really looking forward to the new Harriers coming to the British and American line. And we got a laser warning, but not only do I have no clue where that laser came from, but I don't even know if it was friend or foe. So, Bo don't know. We'll just do what we can do and see what shakes out in the end. And again, this is not your high octane gameplay, but this is really how I get more consistent results at higher tiers. Just play very passively. You only poke out of cover to engage a target that you have line of sight to, and I do try to pay more attention to the mini-map and the soundscape around me to figure out where the opponents are. This is really a tier where it's sort of a point and click and you're dead deal. I mean, unless you're on the mouse. I don't know what that guy's doing, but he's living his best life now, I tell you. I love seeing more people playing the mouse and all of the popularity that it has, with the huge surplus of people going for German ground forces with the mouse event going on. I think it's been a clear message to Gaijin that it really is a beloved vehicle, and honestly, I think they should have done this mouse event earlier and had this be the second iteration of the event, but maybe they know what they're doing when it comes to building hype. After all, they have the experience. In any event, we're not really going to accomplish anything else in this tank, but I just thought I'd share with you a roughly unedited version of my gameplay. This was my second match in the tank, and my first match was just a total disaster, so I'll spare you. And then also, it's going to be my first time in my new Saber. As I mentioned, I loved the CL13, even though I was not enthusiastic about the old, and that was when CL13 was top tier. Top tier meta for jets. I just didn't have what it takes yet in terms of skill as a pilot, and it's been a while since the CL13 was top tier, and it was really with the last World War mode that I got into high tier and even top tier jets, and it sort of broke that intimidation factor for me. I realized that they are very doable. There's a lot of things about those jets that actually make things easier than lower tier aircraft, and in the end, especially for aircraft in War Thunder at high tier and top tier, there are in some ways less things to worry about. Like dogfighting doesn't have to be a thing if you are very capable with your missiles. But well, I'm not quite there yet. It's a work in progress. I kind of felt like this one should have hit though. I mean, look at that. Look at that. Oh well, we do have the guns. So, revenge kill on the Wyvern, and a look at our beautiful boy. He's just drooling at the mouth, looking to make new friends in the sky. And don't tell him that terrible things happen when he fires the missiles. He won't hear you. He's too busy making connections. Bink. That is my favorite thing about missiles in War Thunder, when he can get a kill like that. And in mixed battles, that's much more possible with the lack of a magical incoming missile indicator. I'm a big fan. Anyway, it's going to be back to the airfield for us because we want to pick up a couple more missiles. I know there are more enemy aircraft in the air, and I don't want to be missing out on my my best way of killing them if it can be at all helped. And of course, these jets are so dang fast, you're at the airfield immediately, so I'm only losing about 2 minutes anyway. Doesn't look like our team's doing super hot, but they have been really putting up a good fight, so I expected them to be able to hold for just long enough for me to get myself killed doing something stupid. But I absolutely love the way this Saber handles, and I noticed that it has an all-flying tail, and that alone would have been enough to sell the thing to me. It's an extremely agile, maneuverable, and fast jet, and while it doesn't have the speed of something like the F-11, it excels in almost every other category when compared with oh, sorry, that is a 9.0 jet, and this is 9.3 because apparently 2 AAMs is enough to bump you up 0.3 in battle rating. But also, this is a fantastic version of the Saber. It handles incredibly. I don't even have a maxed crew on this thing, and it just really moves through the sky the way you want it to, and that is so, I mean, this runway, I don't know what the deal is with bouncy runways, but we have bouncy runways, okay? It's just the way things are. But this jet, once you get up some speed, it just kind of does exactly what you want it to. And that can be said for a few of the American designs. The A4B is like that and has been, except for that brief period in time where it was fond of ripping itself to pieces in a light roll at random speeds. That's what you call a bug. But also, of course, the American Sabers are very similar, very capable, although this one just kind of excels and certainly sits at the top. When you compare it with aircraft like the MiGs that it can commonly face, or whatever the French have, I think this was actually an F2H, yes indeed, that we're facing off against here, and it's really a no contest. He didn't know we were there. We get a beautiful ride flying into the chute there on his tail, and the missile tracks perfectly. That was a perfect AAM kill, and as much as I enjoy a good dogfight, it's almost just as satisfying to get a perfect AAM kill like that, where they didn't even know you were there. Beautiful. And this is also at just the right tier where people might not expect you to have some missiles, unless you're in the, what's it called? That German 8.0 that gets a couple of AIM-9Bs. That's a very, very fun aircraft as well, for similar reasons. People generally don't expect you to have missiles, and then surprise, kaplowy. And you don't have to do all of that maneuvering that sacrifices so much of your defensive ability in the respect that you're so exposed to other enemies. Reinforcements, if you will. We're also aware of another aircraft in the area, so we're trying to spot him flying up in the clouds. And this is a super awkward bit of maneuvering we're doing here, but I'm just trying to keep him lined up just right and not lose line of sight, because he's just a tiny little dot down there. You can probably see him if you're in maximum resolution, but I didn't want to lose sight on him, and it does look like he's maneuvering, so he might be aware of us, and that could be something of an issue, because as I said before, it's only a few seconds at these speeds and you're back over friendly airspace with your airfield AA to defend you, and it looks like that might have been his plan from the first convergence. He's in one of those French jets, and one of the things I know about I think they're called the Étendard or something, is there the Barjon? I don't know. I don't know, man. I think the Étendard is actually a lot higher BR, and I don't know my stuff. But a critical hit on something as his... I swear that was the helicopter AA, but it might have been one of his player-controlled SPAA allies, now that I watch the replay. But we are getting lit up by airfield AA, and I was gonna say, those French jets, what was that? A Barjon. They just don't have the energy retention and the acceleration that it takes to dogfight a Saber, so we would have had him if he hadn't run to several different flavors of AA to protect himself, and you know what? We got him anyway. And that was totally fair play on his part. I don't look down on him at all for doing that. Now, MetaDave, we see, spawned in the M26. I think it was an M26. I didn't look at it long enough to get a positive ID. And now he's in T25. This is the tank that never really made it, and it's an interesting concept. It's inferior in almost every way to later models of American tanks of the era, except that it still has the, what's it called, single plane stabilizer, I think, the short stop or the low speed stabilizer that the Shermans and many other American tanks have. And at 5.7, it really is extremely competitive. Is it 5.7 or is it 6.0? Those two battle ratings just kind of merge together in my head the same way that 6.7 and 7.0 do. There's so many vehicles that make a good 6.7 or a good 7.0 that it doesn't make any sense to make a distinction between them. And speaking of distinction, I was recording this while I was also taking care of my kids, so I was like feeding the girls and changing diapers and giving a bottle to the baby boy, and so I was busy. You know what? I have been busy, and I appreciate you all putting up with my ramblings and my much lower amount of time spent on making and editing videos. It really has been good for myself and for my family as a father, that I've spent less time on making videos and less time editing, and at the same time I know that there's just so much cool stuff I want to share with you guys, and I'm super excited when you send in your replays. I think it's just really cool that I have this little community where you guys know that, I don't know, I can make a video with what you guys did in War Thunder. I just think that's really cool, and that's the reason that I started doing this, and I'm still just super happy about it. So thanks for putting up with my bullshit, because I'm always going to put my kids first, and I'm also going to spend maybe just a little bit too much time playing and talking about War Thunder anyway. God forgive me. But here we have MetaDave. There, I finally introduced him, didn't I? And the T25. I think it's called the T25. It's not the M25, right? It is the T, because I think when it's in testing, it's called a T tank, and then if it goes into full production, it gets an M model. I think that's how that works. And this did not make it, and it sort of makes sense why. This is a lot more of a medium weight tank, and in development at the time, immediately toward the end and right after World War II, American tank design was definitely focusing on bigger guns, heavier armor, scaling everything up, and that made sense. You know what? Today we're still using what would have been heavy tanks back in the day of World War II. They just happen to have ridiculous power plants, and thus the ability to mount increasingly larger payloads in terms of armor, crew protection, modules, equipment, and big stonkin' naff-off cannons. And T-25, not a bad example of a meta tank in War Thunder that probably wouldn't have been a meta tank in real life on account of, well, it just doesn't have the armor protection that America was looking for in such a heavy piece of equipment. And in terms of firepower, it also lagged behind what would be coming shortly in the future. So certainly not a future-proof design, but the general layout of the tank is very familiar. You're starting to get more of the look of the Patton tank, moving away from the concept of the Sherman, which was itself a pretty well laid out tank, especially with the technology at hand. But in the game of War Thunder, this is just absolute meta vehicle. It perfectly fits the meta of War Thunder the same way that the Shermans do. And if you ask me what happened to the spalling in that round, I just can't tell you. There was some kind of weird armor plate thing going on there, but I don't know, man. I just live here, okay? And now that the Yak Tiger is traversing around, it's time to put on your celebratory diaper, because things are going to get a little bit messy. And this is the point when I saw that MetaDave was not pushing up on this foe, that I just expected the Yak Tiger to repair his cannon barrel and take him down. But we see a Tiger 2H coming up on him instead. And I have no idea if the Tiger was on the reload or what, but Dave actually had an APCR round loaded in preparation for the faceplate of the Yag Tiger, and instead it goes straight into the ammo rack through the turret armor of the Tiger 2, and then he takes down a Japanese whatchamacallit AA just for good measure. Yag Tiger has his cannon barrel repaired, but he can't traverse fast enough to take down MetaDave who pumps an APCR into the side of his vehicle. Too bad he didn't have APHE loaded there, but I suppose he was still preparing himself to slap one through the faceplate of that thing, and then another APHE through the side armor. This one does activate the fuse properly, and kaplowy the way the American 90mm does. Honestly, my judgment would be that should have been a one-shot kill from the start, but you know what? If weird things don't happen sometimes, then you just don't get the fun times in War Thunder. And like I said before, armor interactions are a little bit strange in War Thunder, but that turned out quite nice for MetaDave, picking up 13 kills to go with his 2 deaths, and a beautiful show. Anyway, guys, the time has just flown by tonight, as it always does. And again, as usual, there's a link to my Discord if you'd like to get in touch with me. That really is my social network, and I couldn't be more happy with the group of folks that we got going on there. Catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.